Welcome to Santa Barbara Talks with Josh Molina. It's my pleasure today to be here with Santa Barbara City Councilwoman Kristen Sneddon. Kristen Sneddon, how are you doing today?
I'm good. Thank you. It's good to be here. Nice to
Yeah,
see you.
thank you. No, I know that it's been a long time coming, so I'm glad we're finally able to sit down and you're kind of in the thick of the election here. But it's so nice to talk to you because as a journalist, I get to report on the things you do at Santa Barbara City Hall. You work at Santa Barbara City College, and so we have some commonality there in terms of being educators and having to deal with the pandemic during the last, almost 2 years now. So I'm really excited about this conversation. But let's dive in right away and sort of ask you. You're obviously in the middle of an election, and you're running for a second term. Can you talk to me about what this experience is like for you? There's so much going on right now. There's all this money in this election. You've got this opponent who's got a lot of money, and there's a person running for the mayor's got a lot of money, at the top. And so it's sort of like, wow, this election's got a lot of energy behind it. But for you, what is this experience like?
Well, it's a really different experience than the last time I ran.
Yeah.
I'm the incumbent, and I'm holding on to my seat, and it's different than running for an open seat. Some things that are really different about this time around is just like you're saying, the energy around it. I mean, I think the last time around, my opponent was a member of the community. We had kids at the same school. I think we understood that we would continue to see each other in the community, and was I would say much more respectful in general, and much more about the policies themselves. And so that's different. And I would say too, the money, like you just mentioned. I mean, we're looking at more money raised in this election by my opponent than ever before. And one of the reasons we have district elections was sort of a rebellion against this kind of gross amount of money being raised in a race. It's a pretty outrageous amount, actually. And if we're looking at the differences there, I have a lot of constituents, people who, regular people who are donating to my campaign this time around. And one of my favorite donations is like a $5 donation, or people, giving what they can. And yeah, the energy is really different. And this time also I have 4 years of experience, so I'm not learning the issues or trying to figure them out. I've been on the front lines with these issues, and I have so much more knowledge now about our water issues, our fire issues, drought. We've made it through some really difficult times this last 4 years. I mean, I was sworn in on the day of the debris flow, and that was in the aftermath of the Thomas fire, and Amazon Nation coming through and changing the way we do retail and business, and then the pandemic. I mean, the world is different now than it was, and bringing that experience in and talking to people at the door, it's just a whole different experience this time. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember because I covered you when you ran the first time, and it was so fun. And I have to give you credit again. I know I've told you this when we talked, but I was doing my Josh Saturday reporting thing, and I was sort of like, I got to get a whole bunch of work done today, so I'm going to call all these candidates and try to meet with them. And you were the only one on that Saturday who said, "Sure, I'll make time." And you were busy that day. You had some personal family commitments, and I always appreciated how you valued the role of the media enough to say, he wants to meet, I'm going to make the time to do it. And so I just remember that campaign and being very appreciative and grateful that you showed that respect to the process and the industry. And you did come out of nowhere, right? You were sort of this person who's like, wow, who's this Kristen Sneddon? She's like knows all these issues, and she's this environmentalist, and she's really somebody who seems to be the perfect fit for that district. And it was really fun to cover. And you did have strong opponents. You had two really strong opponents, and you won on election day. And now it's so different, right? Because you've got one opponent, and he's raised almost, was it 210,000 or something? I've lost count. He's raised a lot of money. What's it like to go up against somebody who's trying that hard to unseat you and raising so much money from developers?
Yeah, it's difficult. I mean, I definitely feel like there is a powerful group of developers who have found a candidate who would further their interests. I mean, I'll speak specifically about my opponent. I mean, we're just learning now that there is, I'll give you one example. In campaign donations, there was one day where an individual using 7 different LLCs went well over 2.5 times the campaign donation limit. We are filing a claim tomorrow because of, this is one example of going around the rules, and it is definitely in developers' interest. And you know, my opponent on planning commission regularly votes for the interests of development. And there's this recently this option 5 where he's leading the charge to have no code enforcement on code violations and 0 enforcement. And the city attorney who is staffing that meeting said that would be like giving a drunk driver the keys to the car. We can't advise that. And even with that knowledge, he's continuing to press it. And other times where he's asked for carve outs for the funk zone, or when we were talking about the Florida area ratio, the FAR, asking for, you know, is that an appropriate number, especially for the funk zone where he has development. So it's pretty clear that he's been serving developers' interests, and he's backed by big developer money, and there's a lot at stake. I mean, there's a lot for these individuals to gain financially, and I don't have that kind of personal financial interest in any of our council decisions, and it does feel very different to be the focus of wanting to have me unseated, because I've been so consistent about not wanting gross development. So it's definitely an attack, and it's focused individually, and it's a very different experience. Yeah.
You know, when you talk to Barrett Reed, when you talk to his supporters, they say, "Oh, Barrett's going to win, right? Barrett's got a lot of support. They're knocking on doors. They're very confident." And that may be just part of what you have to say when you're talking to other people in the media. Are you getting any sense when you're knocking on doors that people are less comfortable or pleased or supportive of you? Or what kind of feeling are you get when you're campaigning? Do you get a sense like they like you still?
I have a lot of support. Yes, I do get the sense. And you know, when you said I came from nowhere the first time around, it seemed like I was from nowhere, but I had been the chair of Peabody Charter School. I'd been the chair of Star King Parent-Child Workshop. I mean, I have a lot that I've done for the community in terms of education and families and neighborhoods, and that still shines through, I think. I mean, people know me when I come to the door. There is a lot of upset about what's happening with our homeless population. There's no secret there, and a lot of the discussions really are focused on that at the door, and so that's where I spend more time. Really, there, you know, our plan has so many moving parts, and we're really making progress, but there's a lot more to do, and so there are people you were concerned about that. I have had the experience at the door where people have met with Barrett and then wrote him an email later saying that they were really disappointed that they didn't know that he himself is a developer, and they felt that he had misrepresented himself. And some people have shared that with me and had written him letters. And so, you know, there's still a lot there. Who you are at the door, you can say almost anything you want, but there's also, I think, in these neighborhoods, in these longtime residents, they know, and I have to have confidence that they understand the differences between us. And no, when I'm at the door, I'm getting the same level of support, and actually more so because they know me now, and I had before I had to introduce myself a lot. Yeah.
And I don't mean to imply you came out of nowhere, meaning you weren't involved. I meant in terms of the city hall infrastructure, but obviously
for sure. Politics wise, yeah, for sure. Yeah.
I want to ask you, you to mention homeless. There's sort of what was in the news this past week was this story that Nick Welsh wrote about, I wrote about this Las Canoas Road project. And Richard Birdie is given 4,500, something like that, as sort of a down payment toward escrow. It's a $14.2 million project to possibly move some homeless people up to this hilltop property. And I think it's in your district. So I'm wondering, do you have any initial thoughts on this proposal? Is this something you can get behind, or what do you think of it?
Well, I definitely have thoughts, and it's 450,000 that that Richard Birdie is putting up, and I'm so appreciative that he has that kind of care. And he writes us letters all the time. He's genuinely very concerned about people experiencing homelessness, and he does want to see a solution. I met with neighbors in the area this morning, and they're very concerned about the high fire hazard area. It's an extreme high fire hazard area.
Yeah.
These are neighbors whose homes have burnt down in the past, and they are very concerned about evacuation, about, there's at least 2 single lane bridges heading up there and out. And if you're talking about 200 individuals living someplace, that's ingress and egress every day, that's services, ingress and egress. And then in the event of a fire, evacuation seems really difficult. So what I got from neighbors, and it sort of mirrors how I feel about it, it is a great model, a great idea. I'm really not sure that this is the place where we could pull something like this off. I mean, it was permitted as a monastery, and so that's a group of people who are in a place and sort of in retreat and staying together and not back and forth. And some ideas, if it did move forward, that I could see there possibly would be single moms with children, maybe, or we have this really growing population of women over 60 who have never been homeless before, are finding that their Social Security checks aren't cutting it anymore, and keeping them out of homelessness and off the streets. Something like that could possibly work there. So we're having a meeting on Wednesday with the county, with SB Act, with CityNet, and with the property owners, and seeing what's up there. And my hope is that we could sort of pivot that kind of attention and direction to a more suitable location. If there's that much money at play, $14 million, then I think we owe it to our residents, to everyone, to really do a look at where other properties, and just cursorily looking, there are other places that would be better serve the residents who would live there, also, to not be so remote. So I learned about it from the paper. I didn't have the courtesy of being invited to, even though it is in District 4. And so at this point, I know about as much about it as you do. And I'm looking forward to learning more about it. And I'm really going to want to stand up for those neighbors who are so worried about the high fire hazards and the evacuation. I mean, it's hairpin turns and really difficult to get up and back from there. So
yeah, well, it's certainly going to become a campaign issue. There's a 45-day escrow period to get people on board to raise money. So I'm sure there's going to be a lot of talk about this proposal leading up to Election Day. I want to talk to you a little bit about the council and how you get along with the council and your colleagues and how effective you are. Obviously, I mean, I think you watch me on Newsmakers with Jerry Roberts. We talk about the council. I let my guard down a little bit and sort of offer a little bit of punditry analysis. But I have covered City Hall, for a long time. So I have seen previous councils, and it can be tough sometimes as a journalist to sort of watch how things unfold, because it feels as though there's some political combat, there's teams, people are working against each other, and you kind of never know how things are going to turn out on any given Tuesday. And there is this perception that there's a lack of leadership, obviously among some people, not everybody, at City Hall, and the mayor's got her own issues she's running on. But I wanted to sort of ask you, can you talk to me about your relationships with the other council members, and how are things going from your perspective?
Sure. I mean, first off, COVID and not meeting in person has changed the dynamic of everything. I wish we could see the faces of people giving public comment. I wish we could speak to them directly. And instead, we're on a Zoom screen and we're facing each other as colleagues. And I think that makes things more contentious than they need to be, because instead of speaking directly out to the room or to constituents, we're talking to each other. And districts are doing their job in that we're each sort of standing up for our individual areas. And what we need is that kind of coming together in leadership. And we all suffer from not having that sort of cohesive voice that brings us all together. I can say about every one of us that we all care a lot, and we're coming from a place of like deep passion for our city and serving our city. We have different ideas about how to get there. And some of those things get really contentious. And on policy issues in particular, the one I'm thinking of right now is the FAR discussion. And I'm often the one no in a group of 6 yeses. And that can seem that interpersonally we're not getting along, and sometimes it can carry over. But my job is to stand up strong for constituents and voters and our residents and what I believe in. And that sometimes can look pretty contentious and can be pretty contentious. But I really think that we're all coming at it from wanting to solve the problems. And, we've gotten a lot done these past 4 years. Not everything that needs to get done. There's still a lot to do. But on some things, we really come together. When we came together for handling the encampments and high fire prone areas, we really came together, and that was all rowing in the same direction. But we had some contention about where to do it, how to do it, and that kind of thing. I think makes a better outcome in the end. But yeah, we certainly have some, we certainly butt heads sometimes, but I think it really does all come from a good place.
Yeah. I want to ask you about one particular person on the council, but let me preface it first. I've covered councils over the years. I remember Doss Williams and Dale Francisco, when they were on the city council, they clashed, they butted heads. Dale was more conservative, obviously, than Doss Williams. So they had some political differences. Going back as far as Mayor Marty Bloom and E.F. Falcone, they had some real differences that played out, and they did not like each other, and it came out in some, police officer association, some union issues, firefighters. And so that was kind of contentious, back in the early 2000s. And so I want to ask you about your professional relationship with council member Meagan Harmon. I had her on the show, and I basically asked her, there's obviously tension. People talk about the tension. There's been some disagreements on issues, and it feels a little bit more intense lately. And I'm just sort of wanting to throw that question out to you. And I know, I'll say it out, right? It's like, why do people keep asking me about Meagan Harmon? I get that. Okay. Like, why is she such a focal point? And I don't mean to like make, I don't mean to put her as any sort of like measure of you, and what you think of her. But I told her was, why can't, you've got 2 really, really strong leaders on the city council. If you guys came together, couldn't you like make this incredible policies, on the council? What is your relationship with her? And can you talk a little bit about why there's tension?
Sure. I mean, we're both, again, just like all the council members, really passionate about where we're coming from. And I would say that there are definitely policy areas where we agree, and that would be, inclusionary housing, tenant protections, just cause eviction protections, these types of things. And we come together strong on those and working on those issues. We have pretty big policy differences on, say, the FAR and sort of the idea of downtown in general. We had some pretty big differences on the State Street master planning process. And that was something where, I I don't back down. And I think that sometimes definitely causes tension. And there's no question that Councilmember Harmon is, intelligent, passionate, cares about the city. And we have really different ideas on size, bulk, and scale, density, what the trade-offs are that are worthwhile. And I've always been sort of uncomfortable with the appointment process, and it's a really different process than an election cycle. And for me, being part of the appointment process, then every decision after that, I sort of feel responsible for in a way, and it's different than when someone is, and this is a full-on election, and when Councilmember Harmon, if elected, is serving the constituents who voted her in, that's a whole different perspective to me. But I've lived here a really long time. I've cared about downtown for a long time, and I feel like my perspective on it counts as much, and that brings tension, and that's what we're there for, to work out the tensions for better policy in the end. And I think we'll get there. We'll get there.
Yeah, I love when you mentioned Piccadilly Square, from sort of citing how you work there, or you used to go there.
I got my ear pierced there.
Because for those of us who did grow up here, it's like, oh yeah, that I know what you're talking about. So you do that knowledge you do have of downtown and its history is valuable. Let's shift gears.
Too, like we remember when there was a stoplight on State Street. We remember before the funk zone, when when La Cumbre Plaza used to be the place to be,
I know.
And that shifted, and then Paseo Nuevo. And I was not always a supporter of Paseo Nuevo and how that changed downtown. And now we're talking about changing everything again. And that long-term view of let's be careful, let's be really careful, because once these things are set in motion, they will impact for decades. And it, it really matters to me. So
yeah, definitely. Let's shift gears a little bit, because I want to talk to you about Santa Barbara City College. It's politics, right? So you're a city council member, and you serve, and you're there every Tuesday and have all these meetings all week, and that's a job. But you have a full-time job, as many of the council members do, away from City Hall, which is your professor or associate professor at City College. Can you talk to me about that? What is that like? I get the sense from when I've talked to you in the past that it's just like a real love and passion for you to be able to teach. So can you talk about that part of your life?
It really is. I love City College. I know you do too. We have this, it's such a gem of our community. And, for myself, I started teaching at City College. I was a student there. I put myself through college, and that's where I started, was at City College. And I think it was a logic class, or a morals and ethics. It's 2 philosophy classes I was a tutor for. And that's when I got my first, paychecks as a teaching person. And the program there, the geology program there, changed my life, completely shifted my trajectory in what I did. And I think ever since, it was 30 years ago, I took my first classes there. I've been working to get back there. But also, my mom, who she went back to school while she was working at the News Press. She went back to school at City College, and then ended up graduating from UCSB when she was 62. So it's like the place of second chances. My kids have all started there when they were in junior high. So it's, it's also the place for extra enrichment, and they took languages and sign language and Spanish and chemistry. And in teaching there, this, like we have students of all ages, members of the community who've retired and are coming back to learn new things. And I do have such a passion for City College. It's just what it gives to the whole community, and keeps us, I think, really in touch with what the needs are of younger people, and what they're facing, what their housing needs are, what their job perspectives are, whether they're staying in Santa Barbara or not. And it really serves locals. What's happened with the Promise program, unbelievable what that's done to open up access to education. And like, I'm such a firm believer that education is the way, and that's what sets us free. I know it did for me. And for my whole family, actually. Even my husband takes classes there online. So it's really been a whole family experience, which is, cross-generational. And I love teaching there so much. It's a privilege, really, to have that.
Yeah, it's so fun. And, we're talking about equity in the campaigns, and it's, just should be part of our fabric, in everything we do. But as you know, City College, we've had a lot of equity training. We're sort of like kind of on the progressive side there in terms of what we've got to, training we have to go to in order to be better teachers. So
yeah, very progressive. And I think that kind of progressive thinking needs to come to the city as well. I mean, any place that is employing that many people that have that much influence on the community, we really should be having that equity lens. And what I teach too is environmental geology. So, every week it's a topic of, debris flow, waste management, water management, groundwater, extreme drought, extreme fire, all of these issues, sea level rise, beach erosion. I mean, it's my wheelhouse. And I love that when we teach it, you can point out the window and say, this directly affects you here, right there. And it's still community building in that way too.
Yeah. So you're back on campus this fall, correct? So partly.
Yeah.
So can you talk about what the experience is like of teaching in a classroom, masks, vaccinations, the mood of the students, that sort of thing?
Yeah. Students who are back on campus are really excited to be back on campus. And, we have the air filtration in the room, we wear masks. It's a little bit hard to catch my breath and project my voice. And it's actually a lot more taxing wearing the mask, but it's so worth it to be in person. And now that we have the vaccine mandate and students are all vaccinated, it feels safer and people are ready to come back. And that online teaching, you did it. It's hard. It's really hard to connect. But on the flip side of that, because we're such an incredible institution, we have students from all over the world. Like I have students, who live in China, Hawaii, Arizona, Temecula, they're all over the place and taking our classes. So that's also sort of a neat way of, for a brief time, expanding our community too, but people in person. And I teach rocks, it's really hard to teach rocks. We sent home rock kits and we're trying to like hold them up in the lens, but it's a whole different thing. And then just the camaraderie. I mean, there's that building of community that way. It's great to be back on campus.
Yeah. It's, hopefully, I don't know what percentage of classes are in person versus online, but there's
30%.
pros and cons, right? You do have students who are from around the world and you're like, whoa, this is amazing. They would never be here if it wasn't for this possibility. At the same time, those students, what I found is the ones who are sort of on the margins, they really benefit from that FaceTime with the teacher, when you can sort of see them and you can sort of say, I think I need to maybe have a conversation with them and sort of check in with them. And that's much more difficult through Zoom because there's this presentation factor that happens on Zoom that you lose sort of that layer of connection. So, I think whatever we can do to sort of, City College is doing it right, just mandatory vaccinations, get people back in the classrooms.
Well, too, like we have a lot of students who are homeless.
Yeah.
And I know, face to face and in person, I've had students where I've pulled aside, like you're saying, and said, are you okay? Do you have food? Do you need help? And it's such a different experience of being able to help somebody directly to the resources they need when you're in person and can walk them over to what they need. And like every time you have to click is a barrier, to get to a service or get food even. So yeah, I think for the community that we serve, and I think it's really important that they see us in person and we can help them in other ways other than just like presenting content. There's so much more.
Right.
What we do. Yeah.
Let's keep talking a little bit more about growing up in the community. I think that it's relevant, obviously, for people who are thinking about whether they're going to vote for you. What was it like for you to grow up here? You went to Santa Barbara High, and what kind of things, did you do as a young person? And when we transition into how things have changed during your time?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I can say, I lived here as a young person and then as a young family and as a single person. And the things that I really love to do in Santa Barbara are free. And we have so many um, free community events that celebrate the arts, and solstice and Earth Day, and just our parks, our amazing parks and the beach. And um, I'm a kayaker. I love the ocean, and anything to do with the ocean
Yeah.
is good for me. And those things haven't changed, but a lot has changed. Well, like we mentioned, it's not just which stores, it's not just Piccadilly Square or what the store is, but having that location where you're meeting with other locals and you're going to run into other locals. I think our farmers market is really our best example of that right now. But I am feeling the loss of that in downtown, that we talk so much about retail and businesses, and we're losing the local focus and the focus on the arts and the focus on our cultural heritage. And I don't just mean Spanish tile roofs, I mean our whole cultural heritage. And um, we really need to bring that back. I mean, it's part of my focus on the De La Guerra revitalization project and, Library Plaza. And that's when I first started talking about a State Street or downtown master plan was, we were talking about all these big spaces that we want to be for locals, but not integrating them, not tying it into State Street. I did have a really fun experience on State Street the other day. My son, who just went to college, my middle child, I have two in
Cool.
college, and he's a musician, and he played with his band on State Street, a jazz combo,
Yeah.
and it was amazing to see how many people stopped, milled around, listened to the music. They made a lot in their tip jar, and it was a really it reminded me of why we need central locations where locals can come and sort of passively spend time with each other. And I'm really passionate about bringing that back. I mean, it's changed. That's
Yeah.
changed.
I mean, there is something special about a few blocks of State Street. It's cluttered, it doesn't look perfect, and there's a whole bunch of problems that we could talk about. But what is special is, wow, there's a lot of people here. They're having fun, and they're interacting. And when we had cars, you didn't see those people. They were on the sidewalk, I guess. But I think more people are coming downtown just because you can walk in the middle of the street.
So many more, and so many different ages. I mean, that's what I saw when my son was playing. Like, there were so many older people who I think have sort of abandoned downtown. I mean, I had heard that last election, like, oh, downtown's not for me. And this time around, there are people with opinions about it because they're actually going downtown, and younger people and groups of people. It has a whole different energy, but we do have to do some careful planning. I mean, we made it through emergency state, and now we have to really pull it in a little, make it look nice, safe. These structures weren't built to last, and so we really need to give some attention to detail and to our aesthetic. I mean, that's part of the El Pueblo Viejo district, and honoring the architecture, and we'll get there. We need to do it. I don't think anybody feels like, oh, we're done, let people just do whatever and we're done. So yeah, but the energy there with people, it's pretty exciting to
Yeah.
see so many people. Yeah.
Let me tie it back to a couple of the issues since we're talking about State Street. Probably should have asked you at the top, but I'll ask you now. PLA, right? There was some news. I think I wrote about it. Jerry probably talked about it. No, other media, but you were always sort of like unsure, skeptical of it, and then you supported it, and then it went to the consent calendar, and then you voted against it at the last minute. And there were some ramifications. You lost endorsement of one of the labor groups. And so it's an election issue, I guess, for some people. Can you talk a little bit about why you changed your mind on that issue?
On the PLA specifically?
Yeah, on the PLA.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I didn't really change my mind. So I was skeptical of it at first. As you mentioned, I had a lot of local businesses that were smaller and who were talking to me directly and showing me their actual plans for their employees. And in a lot of cases, the employees were part owners or had, bought into the companies. We have some who we've worked with really closely who do beautiful work on our water systems. And so, and when it first came, I just was no. And then the next time it came around, I said yes with conditions, that it was, that if they could pull it off without, or negotiate it without double paying health insurance, without double paying benefits, then I could see it. I mean, I support labor, I support unions. And so the idea, though, that locally in our city, if it was going to be impacting our local businesses that have local jobs and workers and are treating them well. I mean, that's the distinction there too. And they said they could negotiate it. And it was sort of, there were other council members from the dais who said, oh yes, it has to have that we don't double pay. And so I said, okay, it was sort of okay, go ahead and negotiate it. And I'll vote yes to move it forward, to keep the negotiation going. And then when it came back, it didn't take care of that issue. There still was the double pay in there. So, and that was my sticking point. And so I really felt, to be consistent, that I needed to vote no on that. But I take the hit on that on both sides, the small businesses, and then also on the, as you said, the labor organization. So in the end, I need to vote what I think is actually the right thing to do. And in that one, it really hinged on being able to negotiate out the double payment. So
labor groups had a pretty strongly worded letter that sort of implied that you wanted the endorsement, and then you got it, and then you didn't support it. I mean, I know you well.
Yeah.
I think, politically anyway, in terms of how you vote. Can you just sort of address that? Did you try to do something and get away with something, and then they decided to withdraw their endorsement? Or can you just respond to that, thinking that you were trying to get their endorsement and changed your mind after you got it?
Oh, sure. Yeah. No, I think this too. I'm a very straightforward person. And I think, I say what I'm actually thinking. And sometimes that gets me into trouble, I guess. I'm saying what I think right now, given the information that I have. And, I was forthright on my application and in the interview. And at that point was told, not by the interviewers, but had been told that was negotiated and taken care of. And so based on that was the conversation that we had. And we actually didn't talk much about the PLA specifically, because I think it was assumed that was done. And it was very respectful, the withdrawal of the endorsement. And I completely respect the process. And of course, it makes sense given how that vote went. And, I was pretty surprised when it came on consent and still had that in there. And I felt myself like, wait a minute, this wasn't presented to me the way. So really, I don't think anybody had the full picture at the time when we were talking about it. But I do always say what I actually think. So there was definitely not a attempt to subterfuge or anything like that. And I don't think they think so either. That's not been my impression of conversations after the fact, that it was, there are a lot of things on labor they really supported with me. And I think it was not that easy of a decision on their part, actually. But I completely respect the process and what that endorsement means. Yeah.
And isn't that the worst part of public service, is just the campaign stuff? And you don't have to comment because you're still in it, but yeah. As an observer, people do things, they change their mind, they say they're not going to do something, and then they do it. And it's just like, whoa, I'm just trying to be an elected official here and serve the public. And there's all this weirdness that happens during election season. So
there is. And, like something can be reported one way or a different way, or different things pulled out. And if the public,
you're going to zing me for the FAR story.
No, Mission Canyon, but it can really sway people on what they think.
Well, let's go there. That was the other thing I was going to ask you, was the
Mhm.
Michigan Canyon Bridge, and sort of there was people who wanted nothing done, and then some people who wanted a little bit done, and the city had all these, the staff had a bunch of proposals, and then sort of I think you're referring to this, at the last minute sort of voted for, let's do a little bit of something. And
I didn't vote for a little bit of something.
what did
I
you
think
vote for? Okay.
that's the part. So
Uh-huh.
there's 4 hours of deliberation.
Yeah.
Let's just start there.
Okay.
And, when it came to us 4 years ago, I was completely opposed to, and still am, and have been consistent in no widening of the bridge, no changing the bridge, no changing any of the character. The projects that came to us had, as you know, all of the options had changes. And so the first motion, not by me, was to take one of those options. And I voted no. So I voted no on any of those options. And then the next vote that came was let's not do anything at all. And the reason I voted no on that is because we'd never directed staff to look at seismic retrofit without altering the bridge. The only things that had come to us were widening or changing. And so I voted no, and then in the hopes that we could look at the seismic, the river scour, undergrounding the power lines, not with altering the bridge at all. I've been really consistent on that and never would have voted to alter it, and didn't. There was a vote right before the final vote, and I voted no on that too. So I didn't vote to alter the bridge, and wouldn't have. So, but to make it safer, that was to me still something we could have looked at without changing it. But something like that is something that people have asked me about at the door quite a bit.
Well, as you know, that meeting was
Yeah.
it was a tough one. Like, I'm trying to figure it out, I'm trying to explain it, and it's not often when you have that many proposals from staff, and there's all these sort of motions and votes.
I think staff kind of changed the impetus. When it first came to us, there was a lot about Vision Zero and it being a real hazard area. When it came back to us, staff was like, well, people overdrive the corridor. It's not really a Vision Zero project. And they had sort of backed off a little bit on the really strong recommendation. And that helped a lot, actually. It's like, oh, if it's not, truly that safety issue in that way, but it's a complicated issue. I just really want to make it clear that, there was that sentence in there that I voted to alter the bridge, and I didn't. I voted no, and then I voted no, but either one of them, I wouldn't have voted to alter it. Yeah.
Well, let's we got about 5 minutes or so to wrap up here. Let's say it's November 3rd, you win. What's on your agenda for the next 4 years? Is it you have a 5 year
5-year term? Yeah.
Even those things out. So this is a super big election. 5 years. You get all the campaign stuff behind you, right? And then you're actually, now I can do the job again. What are some of your goals? What do you want to do if you're reelected?
Yeah, I have a lot of goals. I have a vision for downtown and for the city. And it's one of the reasons I was just so passionate about having to have a downtown master plan, is because I was really seeing, like I said, the sort of like whack-a-mole decision making of, let's put big buildings here, or let's have Delaware Plaza or Library Plaza, let's close a street here or there. And I really have a vision for downtown where we go block by block, and we're looking at the densities and the size, bulk, and scale of the individual buildings and how they fit in, and how we preserve view corridors, and how we make that area, as we're planning it, really safe and clean, but welcoming for locals. I really want to emphasize the locals and what we need to do, all ages of locals. So not just bars and restaurants, but all kinds of different programming in there. I really think we've lost our sense of the arts and how important that is to our community. We are an arts community, and it's an economic driver, and it's a big part of people in our community. So the bringing the arts front and center as we're planning downtown. I think too that I'm really proud of this new sustainability and resilience department. And even though there's some survey saying that people don't think that that environmental issues are local issues, I really beg to differ. And I mean, when we've been through debris flow and extreme fires and droughts, and we're planning for sea level rise, it is most definitely a local issue, whether people realize it or not. And I have um, a lot of passion for that and wanting to see through what that new fledgling department can do and in terms of looking out for our city. And I have like sort of a pet project in resilience hubs. I want Peabody to be an example of that, where you could go 4 days without power because you have solar and the backup and the industrial kitchen, and it could be information center, and having it be a pilot for other areas. So I mean, that's one of the things. And the Delegara revitalization plan, I chair that committee, and I really want to see that through. There are a lot of really great ideas there, and I don't want it to just, languish. And then, the AIA charrettes and all of that work that was done there. I mean, the whole reason in the first place that I thought a downtown master plan would be a good idea is because I'd seen the last AIA charrette, and I thought, well, what do we do with these actual concepts? And I spent a lot of time working with Cass Ensberg and um, members of HLC and Amy Cooper and different business owners to see, like, how do we make those a reality? And so very dedicated to seeing that through. Big plans for Macy's, Nordstrom, Sears. I'm not going to go another term and have those just be vacant. They need to be housing. I just feel so strongly that needs to be housing. And even when we're in negotiations, they say, oh, it can't be housing. I'm just going to keep saying it has to be housing. We have to find a way for that to be housing. Even if we have to tear them down and have purpose-built buildings, I don't think we should be constrained by how it was built for Macy's, that, oh, well, too bad, can't be housing. So there's that. And then the big issue of homelessness. I mean, we've made huge progress, but we're just at the beginning, and there's so much more needs to be done. And I mean, that's another area that I really, really want to see that through. So, I see downtown as a big focus right now, but then also up in the hillsides, what we've done with fire protection, water drought. I'm on the Water Commission, the liaison, the Kachuma Operations Management Board. That's really where I have a lot of expertise. And, we have this diversified water portfolio to get us through the next historic drought. We're already at 50% at Kachuma and talking about the emergency pumping facilities. And that's a whole area that doesn't get a whole lot of press, but is actually a lot of work goes into securing our water future. So I have a lot that I that I still am working on and want to do. I mean, I'm all in it. Yeah.
How excited are you about Rebecca Bjork, Renee Irely? You've got your two top administrators, women who are serving in these roles, at a time when, you just look around, there's litigation related to, issues. Are you excited about that, sort of this new direction, new vision with this new administration?
I'm very excited about them. They are a power team. I mean, that's where working with all of the sort of public works issues and on water, and having worked with Rebecca Bjork directly for these last 4 years. I mean, she is a systems person. She's a vision person. She's pragmatic. She gets things done. And I really believe in her. And then Renee Irely and what she's done with our homeless issues, but also she's leader of the sustainability and resilience, because she has this whole background in that, and the way that they work together, and the way that they talk about the issues is I'm so confident in them and really excited. And I a huge issue I had was the community development department and how broken it was. And so Rebecca now has spent interim time as head of that department, and really on a systems level analyzing what needs to happen to make that department run well. And now we have a great new leader of the community development department. And I think that that's really going to turn that around. But back to Rebecca and Renee, I mean, they're a power team, and I'm really excited for the way they work with staff who really respect them. And it's sort of I don't know, it's really a different dynamic, and I think it we've had a lot of changeover and you know, instability, and I think they're going to really anchor us and bring us back to center. And like Rebecca, I talked to her about, you know, what about all this turnover? And I asked her, could we do a survey of staff, of everyone, to really get to the root of why are people leaving? And including, you know, is it council dynamics? Is it leadership dynamics? I want to know. And she wants to go there. And then back to basics. She wants to do a whole audit of, you know, how we spend our money, and back to like, let's get our parks clean and maintained. Let's really hone in on our sort of basic services the city offers. And I really applaud that. So I'm excited to work with them. I think they're really great, both of them. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's really exciting. Looking forward, you know, sort of covering that new change at City Hall. I want to thank you for taking time, Councilmember Sneddon. I know you're busy with this campaign and everything you've got to do. It is, you know, it's intense, and it's, you know, it's going to be competitive. You know, I do think it's going to be close, and you know, you're definitely in the thick of it. So I appreciate you making time to talk about yourself and your issues, and it's always a pleasure. And I've enjoyed writing about what you've done the last 4 years and your campaign the first time. So, you know, good luck to you going forward. So thanks
so much. It's good to see you. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Kristen.
Okay. Yep. Bye.